Welcome to the RTE Soccer Podcast, World Cup Daily Edition. As promised yesterday, I'm going to call that something different every day. The words will be in a different order, but you get the gist. This evening, I am joined by John Brewin, English football journalist, and by Conor Neville of RTE Sport. How are we doing, gentlemen?
Good.
Good
Yeah,
stuff.
I'm very well, Mikey. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, lovely to have you, John. We were just discussing off air the last time myself and John spoke was the day after the 2014 World Cup final. We were sitting on Copacabana Beach drinking a few beers, so this is
Yeah.
just like that.
Almost.
There probably are a few English fans in Qatar now squeezed into the rooftop bars and fan zones enjoying a few delicious Budweisers toasting a 6-2 win, John, which is just what the English team ordered. There was, questions about whether Gareth Southgate's team had lost some momentum in the build up to the tournament. But more immediately, the build up to this match was very much overshadowed by the never ending One Love armband debate, which was ended quite definitively by FIFA with the rather undramatic threat of a yellow card, which seems to have done it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about the yellow card has been the punishment that everyone's talked about all day, but just looking at some coverage in the past hour or so, the suggestion appears to be that the sanction would be heavier. So someone like Harry Kane or Gareth Bale for Wales or whoever of those other European countries that was was wearing the armband would get a serious sanction. Um, so maybe, I mean, we've all said it. I've said it certainly that this idea of, well, surely you take a yellow card for this is perhaps not quite as cut and dried as we might think. It appears to me this is a FIFA directive. There is this from the Qataris themselves. They claim they haven't put any pressure on this. Well, okay, but what essentially FIFA and Mikey, you've been to these tournaments. FIFA go to these countries and they want to escape essentially with the loot from this adventure. They don't want to antagonize the host of this country, so they take these steps, and they don't really care who they, if I may use the phrase, piss off. And so the others suffer, others have to bear the brunt of that. And England, and we've seen this issue which Belgium can't wear their away kit because it holds some sort of rainbow insignia. There's been Welsh fans had their rainbow
Bucket hats.
bucket hats taken off them. Grant Wall, the famed US journalist, was refused entry and wearing a rainbow shirt. They've gone heavy on this, and England appears to be caught within that.
Yeah. Conor, we were just on the podcast last time, we were saying, we'll move on to the football shortly. And I was saying, well, actually, tomorrow, day two, could be as political as any day of the tournament. Never mind the first day, because the England v Iran obviously has many historical connotations. But it was in stark contrast, wasn't it? Really, that England and these other European countries, kind of bowed to FIFA's demands not to wear an armband, whereas the Iranian team are risking God knows what kind of sanctions by not singing their national anthem in protest to the treatment of protesters in their own country. So the whole stick to football brigade aren't having a very good tournament so far, and just hats off to the Iranian footballers who have shown some real courage, because there was a couple of players who spoke out before the squad was announced, and there was pressure in their home country for them not to be selected. So for them to en masse to make this decision is ballsy.
Absolutely, and they could face a much heavier sanction than you'd imagine. What was initially reported to be just a yellow card. I know John says it might be more. There might be more to it than that, but yeah, the optics of it, from the point of view of the Iranian protest vis-a-vis England and Wales caving on this, is very stark, and it doesn't really look good for. I am surprised the extent to which FIFA have caved into the Qataris' demands. I mean, I do recall in Brazil in 2014, they had laws against drinking at matches, and this FIFA essentially prevailed upon them that they had to be allowed to sell beer at these games. So I'm struck by the extent to which the Qataris seem to have imposed their will on FIFA. Now, I know they're FIFA is a world body, and they were determined, obviously, to take it to the Arab world at some point. And how it went there is very controversial. But I had kind of thought that there might be more give and take as regards, Qatari, maybe the Qataris bowing to outside forces, but they don't seem to be doing that. It's almost as if they're entirely disenchanted with the sort of criticism they're receiving there, and they're lashing out it feels almost defiant from the hosts at this point.
It does, and as John says, the tradition is that FIFA come into town, insist you build these stadiums and update your infrastructure, spend millions upon hundreds of millions, and then insist you do whatever FIFA want. And Qatar are doing that, John, and it's making for some from this remove. It's fascinating, and obviously for those on the ground in Qatar, it's a very interesting World Cup, and the idea that these issues were going to go away once the ball started rolling, as Gianni said, I think that might have been a bit naive on FIFA and the Qatari ruling families part, I think.
Well, and Gianni himself, I mean, who appears to be bowing and scraping whenever possible with the Al Thani family, the ruling family of Qatar. I mean, I hope, you have to hope actually that such pressures continue throughout the tournament. I think they probably will, and that makes FIFA look ridiculous, though, as we've seen over the years, they don't really care about looking ridiculous. It's okay, as I said, just as long as they make that loot, and then we roll on. And of course, one of the games tomorrow features Saudi Arabia, heavy bidders for 2030. Already have Lionel Messi as one of their boys. I mean, it's all interlinked, and I suppose you could try and concentrate on the football if you wanted, but I think football, particularly in the last 20 years or so, is tainted by these scandals, isn't it? So actually, we can call it a scandal, can't we?
Yeah.
Just by this filthy lucre, the Sex Pistols called it, and that's pretty much it.
Conor, we're trying to watch this match.
I'm worried about yelping like Paul Merson here, but Wales almost scored there. But Davis,
they almost scored, or they did.
Almost. No, it was
a good save.
This is the glory of trying to watch a match in the age of stream. Oh, that is a good save. I'm watching on the esteemed RTE player, which by its nature, it's a very reliable service in my book. John, you won't notice the RTE player is kind of...
Yes, I have used it.
It comes in for some criticism at times of heavy traffic.
Barely again.
Well, we have the same problem in the UK with the iPlayer and ITV Hub have already social media disgrace over those. So I'm
watching a little behind here.
On FIFA, I mean, I'm struck by how aggressively sycophantic Infantino is. I mean, even with Putin, even there was that promo. He did a kind of a meet and greet in the White House with Trump when they were unveiling the sort of America, Canada, Mexico bid, and his fawning over Trump was it's quite a spectacle to look at. I mean, he gave him a yellow and a red card to show the media or something.
The one thing you'd say about Sepp Blatter is he didn't usually do the fawning. He was usually fawned upon.
Absolutely,
Infantino's doing the impossible. He's making Blatter look almost
statesman-like. Okay, let's switch to the football for a little while, John, because for Gareth Southgate, that was a pretty good outing. Iran are no mugs, they're 20th in the world. Have some footballers obviously playing at a very high level, and the doubts about England before coming into the tournament, strangely, given what Gareth Southgate had based his success on thus far, was the defence, in that few fullbacks down, Harry Maguire not playing. So he said afterwards he's a bit peeved at the 2 goals conceded, but I think he'll probably sleep okay considering they scored 6 at the other end and did look, unlike at times at the Euros, even though they reached the final, where the attack wasn't always that fluid, it really did look good. And when you see the subs they have to bring on as well, there are reasons for optimism.
Yeah. I mean, talking of those subs, I mean, Marcus Rashford comes on, scores in 49 seconds, looks like the Marcus Rashford we remember from a few years ago. Callum Wilson, who I suppose was it wasn't a controversial choice, but it was one of the big selections he had to make. Him over Ivan Toney, though we probably know why Ivan Toney hasn't been selected now. And but Callum Wilson came on, showed great unselfishness in setting up a goal for Jack Grealish. Obviously, on as a sub himself, but beyond that, I'm fairly sure I've not seen the papers for tomorrow just yet, but it will be all about Jude Bellingham, Saka, that just looked a level of talent that obviously as an Englishman we don't often see, and we seem to have a lot of those players at the moment. Now, Gareth Southgate has been criticised, particularly among certain broadsheet journalists over here, for not releasing the handbrake. But that was it seemed to me that he felt that Iran were probably there for the taking, even though I think the England coaching team, a couple of them had said that they expected a dog of a game. They just went for it. And okay, you might suggest that because of the issues we talked about before, the Iranian team were perhaps not as mentally prepared for the game as they might be. But again, football does not operate in a bubble. But England took them apart. They were ruthless. I was just watching one of those videos that footballers do now of Harry Kane, delivering that, and he must be annoyed he didn't score in that game. I think he played very well. It has to be said, he played very well. But if you're Harry Kane and you're looking to be the all-time scorer for England in a World Cup and in major tournaments and for the national team, you're a bit gutted by that, because Iran, at a certain point in that game, looked like they were there for the taking. Could have wrapped up a score. And of course, it did last 108 minutes or whatever, so plenty of time to score.
Even more than that. Conor, I think as good as England were going forward, a lot of the explanation for that 6-2 scoreline could come down to the reason for the first long stoppage, which was the loss of the first choice goalkeeper too. It looked like a broken nose and probably a concussion. But the fact that they were so desperate to sew up his face and get him to continue, and also Carlos Queiroz just headed his hands as the sub goalkeeper went on, suggested that they didn't have a lot of faith in their number two. And according to the stats I saw, England had 7 shots on target and they scored 6 goals. So maybe Carlos was onto something.
It doesn't know. I mean, I'm trying to think of the goals. Were any dramatically his fault?
No, they weren't really.
I mean, I thought England were...
They weren't all unstoppable, but there was no clangers. No.
I thought they were very slick and authoritative now, England, and they're definitely contenders. I mean, I'd kind of been... I suppose it underlines the extent to which England is kind of indifferent towards the Nations League, because I think some of us might have got the notion that their wave had sort of crested a bit because their form had been quite uneven this year. I mean, I know that they didn't perform terribly well in the Nations League, but I suppose it shows how little interest and how much apathy there is for that tournament in England. And I thought they looked exceptionally good. I mean, it's not that long ago. I mean, I suppose it's a decade ago where you remember England struggling in these sorts of games. I mean, I think the game that sticks out to me is Algeria under Fabio Capello. I think the game where Wayne Rooney mouthed something into the camera at the end.
The game doesn't stick out for many reasons.
It used to be a sort of long-standing tendency of England to sort of draw 0-0.
Struggle, yeah. Then the last World Cup, they put 6 past Panama, so...
It doesn't happen anymore. They just, they stomp all over these teams now, and I thought they looked, extremely good. Iran are probably poor. I suspect they'll probably prop up this group. Looks like America are going to come second, but no, England are definite contenders, I think.
John, the one reason for maybe the uptick in England's form is the aforementioned Jude Bellingham, but you'd also have to say the resurgence of Luke Shaw has definitely added something there. So it's not a new team, but add in a 19-year-old who is coveted by every club across Europe and who definitely adds some, like, he's defensive midfielder who can attack basically, which is a great thing beside Declan Rice. And also, Luke Shaw's going through in his peaks and troughs. He's at a peak of form at the moment, and like you can't forget when he goes through those periods of lack of confidence or whatever you want to call it. He's a fantastic fullback, attacking fullback when he's on form and he's fit. So himself and Bellingham have certainly added something and kind of regenerated slightly the team of Euro 2021.
Yeah. I mean, Luke Shaw scored in the final Euros and played
Mm.
very well in that tournament. Has not played at all well since, pretty much.
Yeah,
Maybe improved a little bit under Eric Ten Hag at United. Um, the thing is with Bellingham, I mean, you have that thing where he left Birmingham City and they retired his shirt. I think he was 17 at the time, might actually only been 16. Um, they seem to know, they seem to know, didn't they, how good this guy could be. A colleague of mine at the Guardian, as a Birmingham City fan, and he watched him and just said, "This guy is unbelievable." And um, England have been pretty decent in midfield in recent years, but and I don't want to criticise Jordan Henderson because I think he's been a good player for England, but the difference in what Bellingham provides is huge because you've got that defensive ability, you've got that ball carrying ability. He scores goals as well. I mean, it's his first goal for England, but I mean, he scores goals in the Bundesliga. Um, it's one of those things. I mean, Liverpool supposedly have planned to sign Jude Bellingham next summer. This is part of the master plan to um, recharge their team. Well, good luck is all I can say because no wonder they're casting around for new owners because they'll need to spend $250 million to get him by the looks of things. Because if it carries on like this, yeah, everyone's going to want him.
yeah. It is actually that's one unusual kind of quirk of this Winter World Cup where you don't have the summer spending. It'd be unusual for Real Madrid to spend $500 million in the January transfer window. You wonder will that old tradition
Yeah,
of the kind of Galactico supermarket sweep happen in a January transfer window, or will they just have to sit on their hands till next summer and do all their shopping? We'll have to wait and see on that front. Yeah, as you said, John, we don't really know kind of how big the hype is going to get. It has seemed tempered, and I think it's probably the same in every country. The World Cup hasn't, unfortunately, we're not there, but obviously, but it does seem that the 1 week build up,
yeah,
the unhappiness a lot of people have with many things to do with this World Cup. It seems to me that England could possibly benefit from this because nobody has ever argued that. Well, the England team, they could benefit from a bit more pressure from their media. It seems that perhaps this could be a good thing that they'll always say they're closed off from kind of the hype, etc. But I don't think that's true. So perhaps this slightly low key kind of lead into it might help them.
yeah. I think that's helped, but I do think I think a lot of the credit has to come to Gareth Southgate in that the England team has this fairly open door policy. The media, the English media's relationship with the England team is not the same as it was back when Roy Hodgson was the manager. Where it was adversarial. Obviously, there's going to be a couple of grizzled old hacks who, just for the sake of it, are going to write, "Get rid of this guy," because there's nothing else to write. But and all the handbrake stuff comes into that. But yeah, I do think that this World Cup has almost arrived. Of course, not by surprise because we've known about it for 12 years. Or when was the decision made? Say 6, 7 years ago that we knew it was going to be played in the middle of winter. But yeah, I haven't seen a great deal of hype. I mean, you had the odd pictures of Rishi Sunak watching the game, Sakir Starmer watching the game. There's obviously been a footage from Croydon Box Park, people heading down there at midday to get pissed up on a Monday. I mean, it's all a bit try hard. But the thing is, during a summer tournament, England, just as it is in Ireland, there are no England flags on my street. There's no
Mm.
bunting. The pubs aren't really advertising watching England games here, so it's just very, very different. Very different. Well, I'm sure the England team feel an element of pressure, and that will go on as the tournament's gone on. But I suppose when you've been a relatively successful team, maybe you don't quite feel the pressure as they have done when they weren't as well equipped for these tournaments.
Yeah, that's interesting. What John says, Connor, about kind of the pubs. It's not kind of the hype isn't there, obviously, because people aren't on holiday, kids are in school. People probably have to work. A lot of people working from home now. I wonder if this is the true because we're just talking about the RTE player there. Is this the first streaming World Cup now? Is this the World Cup people are going to watch in solitude at their working from home desks? It could have untold repercussions on the World Cup.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I read Larry Ryan's article over the weekend about how the World Cup, the World Cup isn't in Qatar, it's on the telly, and he talked about how he described every World Cup in terms of where he was in life and where he watched it. And yeah, that could be, there does seem to be a sort of atomized watching it at home kind of element to this World Cup. There isn't the same pub activity. Yeah, in terms of I mean, the sort of quietened atmosphere out of England and out of the English press was one of the biggest sort of most disconcerting aspects of this World Cup, because it's usually very loud and hard to ignore, whereas it seemed kind of absent, and there was a lot of primarily discussion of sort of outside non-football issues which have continued. I mean, I presume it'll change the deeper England go into the tournament, and it will ramp up. I mean, you have to expect that, and I would imagine they'll go fairly deep. But yeah, I would expect it'll ramp up, particularly if they continue to play as well as they did today. My favorite social media comment, just by the by, was someone saying the scoreline 6-2 is usually followed by Joe Root coming on to rescue England.
Hey, I like it.
That's a joke which might be lost on some of our audience, but
possibly. But we're counting on John's massive social media following, bringing us in a lot of English listeners and viewers here, so they'll enjoy that one, Conor. Speaking of streaming the World Cup, I'm working from home the last couple of days, and so my wife has been getting involved, and she's actually predicted the winner of every match so far, which I can't say. So I remember who she backed in this one. Yeah, it's obviously some knowledge is going.
Turn that into a slot on the website.
Oh, like she could be our psychic octopus, my wife. That I'm not sure if she'd go for that. Did have a frog in the back garden today, which someone suggested we could get it to leap into buckets with the different countries' flags on it. This frog seemed a little bit. I think he's a bit long in the tooth for any jumping. That's why he's stuck in my garden. We'll move on briefly just to touch on the Netherlands and Senegal. This is one of the matches where I really thought, Mane obviously missing, but Senegal, a very strong squad regardless, John. An insult to kind of call them a one-man team. And I thought there was a case of no Memphis Depay, no party for the Netherlands too. And that actually turned out to be the case, because they couldn't score a goal until he surprisingly appeared off the bench. And, for people whose football kind of revolves around the Premier League, the fact that Memphis Depay is possibly the most lethal striker in European international football is kind of a surprise. He didn't score, but he certainly made them a more threatening team when he came on, and his fitness is clearly key for Van Gaal here. Yeah,
and of course Van Gaal had him as a younger player at Manchester United, and he barely played. Yeah, he just disappeared, but reunified. And having said that, I watched, obviously that game all the way through, and I thought, I've seen this game before from a Van Gaal team, which is bitty. Some penalty. Oh, we've got a penalty to Wales.
I look forward to seeing this.
Well, I didn't see it either, but
it's like Gareth Bale's gone down, so Ramsey.
Bale gone down, yeah. Ream, or is it Ream? No,
it's one of the. It's not Tim Ream.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's a stick-on penalty. The waving of the finger from the defender always tells you that that's exactly what he's done.
Yeah. And the referee is standing
out of defenders that
4 feet away.
It needs to be gotten rid of.
Yeah. No, that referee was pretty sure. He's a Qatari referee as well, isn't he? So this is his chance
from the highest level. Yes.
Yeah. No, that's a penalty. So while we wait for the VAR check, we've probably got about 3 minutes to do.
Okay. Well, he seems to be ushering away Americans at the moment. Yeah. So I've seen those games before. As I say, Van Gaal, a manager or a coach, always seems to reinvent the wheel. They appear to have only one midfielder in the game, Frankie de Jong, who had a lot of the ball, and they had a load of wingers and players playing in weird positions. And there was that early miss. I think it was from De Jong himself, actually, where it was almost the classic Van Gaal ball played across when you got an overload, and he missed it, and he overtook it, and he
didn't even have a shot. I don't think.
Yeah, he played one too many touches, and I just thought, yeah. I watched this for 3-4 years at Manchester United, or 2 seasons, and then yeah, they got the job done because I think they've got high quality players. Oh, Wales score.
Oh no.
Gareth Bale, of course. So yeah, that game, from what I've seen, looks like it's got away from United States, who were excellent
Totally
in the
done.
They were
first half.
fantastic in the first half, yeah.
Yeah.
All over them.
But I think that's the thing with Wales, isn't it? That they hang on so well in these games. And someone like Bale, I mean, he hasn't been able to run a leg for years, but he always turns up in these matches.
Yeah.
Incredible. But Aaron Ramsey, they were saying, had barely played for Nice and, another player. That's the thing about international football, isn't it? That certain players come to the party.
Absolutely, yeah.
And talking of Mane, it's just a shame that he isn't there to do that job for his country.
Yeah, it is because like Senegal, they look. They have so many, really quality players. But like Argentina, short of Messi, aren't, and nobody's talking about them as potential winners of the tournament. Like international football, the standard isn't as high as a top level club football. And if you have one world class footballer and you lose them, you don't have to be Senegal to be in trouble there, I think. So that group is probably, you'd probably describe it as finely poised now, because Ecuador and Senegal, Conor, would probably still be fancying their chances of getting out of there, because everybody's got to think that Qatar are a bit of a dead duck.
Boys.
Yeah, when we saw obviously Qatar and Ireland last year, and they lost 4-0 in Dublin, and that appears to have been an accurate sort of picture of who they really are. So yeah, Netherlands are effectively through the group. I was doing the minute by minute from that game. I was quite unimpressed by them, I have to say. De Jong was very uneven performance, but then he turned up. He did curl in that cross for the goal. Gakpo with a terrific darting run across, and then they scored. I was interested. FIFA released a attendance, which was, I believe, they claimed was 41,500, which was odd given the capacity is apparently 40,000.
Yeah. And
there were several. Now the FAI used to get a hell of a lot of slagging for their claims about attendances here, but in fairness to them, they never actually went so far as to claim the attendance was bigger than the capacity of the stadium. So FIFA appeared to be breaking new ground there. But yeah, it was. I thought the first half was relatively lively, and then it really degenerated in the second half. And Senegal looked the likelier team to score. I mean, well, I say they looked the likelier team to score. They looked slightly the better team and the more adventurous team. But yeah, they create huge chances either. Noppert in goal did quite well with a couple of saves down to his left. But I wasn't hugely impressed by the Dutch. I mean, they have quite a straightforward group from now on, so they'll get to the knockout phase. But I wouldn't fancy them to go too far. I don't want to go down the Dunphy route of writing teams off that early. But, I suspect. I think they're maybe the quarterfinal might be as far as they'll go on the evidence of today.
Okay, John. Yeah, the attendances are definitely not what they're supposed to be. We're looking at this game, like Wales are as well supported probably as most Europe, like considering that the hype there. The States are traveling in relatively strong numbers, I believe, from what I read beforehand. Yeah. Obviously, no one's traveling in the same numbers that they might do at another World Cup, and the atmosphere here sounded great in the first half, despite the fact that you're not looking for empty seats; they are apparent all across the stadium.
Yeah. I mean, obviously Wales, they're not travelling in the numbers that they did to France 6 years ago for obvious logistical reasons, but they are taking. I think the statistic is they're taking as many fans as England. The Americans, I think it's always the case that most tickets that FIFA sell are the country that buys the most are America. I think that's the case again. In this
America
tournament.
and Mexico always feature very high on that, don't they?
Yeah. Whenever you fly to, when I've been to World Cups, I'm always on a plane full of Mexicans. I'm not sure why that is, but that is always the case. And I mean, the England game earlier had this ticketing problem, which brought back actually slightly concerning memories of the Champions League final in Paris, where it was to do with ticket printout and Bluetooth on phones and stuff like that. A friend of mine, actually, his brother is working in the logistics out at that stadium, a Brazilian friend of mine, and he said they'd been happily messaging each other earlier that morning, and then his brother disappeared for 2 or 3 hours because suddenly all hell broke loose, and they had to sort out this problem. I don't know if fans are actually receiving that great a welcome just yet. Teething problems. I mean, they've had test events, haven't they? They had the Arabian Cup out there, but that sort of swell of fans, even if it is undersold, perhaps hasn't. They're not used to it. And the Senegal Netherlands game that you mentioned, yeah, a friend of mine was checking WhatsApp me during the game and said it's 10,000 under what you'd expect, and yet the capacity is 1,700 over what they claim. Which interesting accounting principles taking place there. Perhaps let's think it's that.
FIFA and interesting accounting, John. I would never have thunk it.
Yes.
Okay, let's look briefly ahead to tomorrow, gents. We won't dwell too much on it, but I did read a rather charming Lionel Messi quote this afternoon, which I think I should share with you before their opening game against Saudi Arabia. It's a beautiful thing that many people outside Argentina want us to win, and that it's largely because of me. And Conor, it's okay. He's won the Ballon d'Or 7 times. He's the greatest player most of us have seen in our lifetime, at least, or as sentient adults. We're not going to get into that row now. But when you're Leo Messi, you're kind of allowed to say things like that. But if it was anyone else, if Cristiano Ronaldo said what Leo Messi said there, Conor, I think there would be people, apoplectic at it. Whereas what Leo Messi says, it's kind of like, bless him, he is awful good, isn't he?
It sounds like the type of thing Ronaldo. It sounds almost too humble for Ronaldo to come out with. No, I mean, yeah. Well, it is true. It has the benefit of being true, or at least it did before he said it. But yeah, no, I mean, certainly, it's a big fact. I mean, Argentina are one of the most interesting aspects of this tournament because it's hard to remember a time when Argentina came to a World Cup not perceived to be in a bit of a mess. I mean, even the year they got to the final, there wasn't a great deal of they didn't seem to be great buoyancy about them, whereas they're coming in fantastic health at the moment. I think the last time, oddly enough, they went into a World Cup this fancy, it was in 2002, where they proceeded to go out in the first round after David Beckham scored a penalty against them. But
I still have that jersey. I'm very, very fond of that. Very simple, classic
Bielsa was manager
jersey.
I think Bielsa was manager that time. But they're on a 35 game unbeaten streak. They haven't lost since the Copa America 2019, and and they've lost Lo Celso, which is a bit of a loss for them. But they're otherwise they're in excellent shape, and Messi is no longer sort of carrying them on his own. He's probably not burdened with that task as he may have been in years past. They appear to have a better all-around they seem to be a better all-around organism. So it'll be one of the interesting things. Now, obviously, that's tempered by the fact that the last time everyone was tipping them they proceeded to go out in the first round. So I presume they'll have too much for the 2030 hosts.
If they do put 5, 6, 7 past Saudi Arabia tomorrow, John, it's gonna really kind of top a fairly miserable 3 days for Middle East football. Really, they're hosting the World Cup, and Qatar, Iran, and potentially you'd have to think Saudi Arabia could be on the end of a shellacking as well. It's really not what they wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. I was surprised to learn Qatar are Asian champions, which probably doesn't say much after what we saw in that opening game, where I suspect Ecuador stepped a little off the gas, and politically sensitive, perhaps. Argentina. Yeah, I mean, there is this idea, isn't there, about the supporting cast that he's got. There's a proper striker there in Lautaro Martinez from Inter Milan, who's such a good player. And then that host of young talent, Julian Alvarez of Manchester City among them. The thing is with Argentina is, with Messi, you've always seen these players who are brilliant players for their clubs just sort of fade in his wake. I'm thinking of Sergio Aguero. Now, Aguero's fitness for Argentina always seems to be a bit off, but this team does appear to work better. Lionel Scaloni, West Ham legend, appears to have got into Messi's head, and appears to make him realise that he doesn't have to do everything. And as he's got older, he perhaps picks his moments a bit more, because the image of Messi at a World Cup is him almost carrying the ball everywhere and trying to do everything, because he can't trust this group of other idiots, most of whom play for top European clubs, to do the job for him. That's changed. You remember the World Cup in 2018 where they were taken apart by Mbappe. And it's interesting what he says about this, that everyone's on my side thing. I think it's true. I think we always get to this position, don't we, these greats, when they reach the final tournament, that we want them to do well, and it would be nice to send them off with a nice swan song. Except perhaps this time, no one really wants that for Cristiano Ronaldo. But I suppose he's had that at Euro 2016, so he's had his fun. Maybe it's Messi's turn.
Yeah, I do think there is, like, certainly for the neutrals. As I said, it's always a lovely jersey. I own one, very happy with it. Had it for 20 years. There's the jersey, there is, the style of play. There's a lot about Argentina we love, but it is Messi, really.
Just to note here, there's 9 minutes of injury time.
I know, this injury time.
This is becoming the World Cup of injury time, really.
There's a touch of the rugby union to it.
Yeah, the last one was, the 2018 World Cup was VAR. That was VAR, and this one is just... And actually, if I recall, the last World Cup, was it one where they just finished the game straight dead on 90? So they seem to have circumvented this. They've gone against it and gone to... Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's a little bit ludicrous. It's messing with our timings here as well. Probably going to lose John before the end of this game.
Yeah.
We might lose all of us before the end of this game. Conor, one thing, kind of a little bit of interest, I suppose, considering the protests, lack of protests, political kind of messages that have been put across so far. We have two teams in action tomorrow in Denmark and Australia. Denmark are playing Tunisia and Australia are playing France, who have been very vocal in a number of ways. Denmark obviously have got a kit which is devoid of branding from Hummel, which is a nice bit of marketing, but also, look, it is making some kind of a statement. And also, obviously, Australia, who put out a very powerful, the Socceroos put out a very powerful message kind of addressing human rights issues in Qatar. So it'll be interesting to see if either of these clubs do anything tomorrow. Either of these teams do anything tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, given the extent to which they've been vocal, that will be very interesting to see, because it's hard to imagine them backing down. I mean, I know there was a sense that England hadn't been quite as forthright. I know they had said they would wear the One Love armband, but I don't think they've quite been as aggressively forthright as the Australians or the Danes on these issues. So, I mean, it's going to be another flashpoint tomorrow. We'll see, though. I mean, FIFA maybe swinging into gear and amping up the threats. I'd expect another flash. But I'd be surprised now if the Australians back down, given the extent to which they've come out on this issue and been very adamant about it. So I suspect they might go for the armband, and then we'll see what happens.
John, I know you have to go, so just in a word, France, few players coming out today, pretty much explain, among them Olivier Giroud, explaining why not having Karim Benzema isn't at all a bad thing. The French are great. They can actually come out in the press conference and say, your man, World Player or European Player of the Year, he's injured. Doesn't matter, I get to play and Mbappe likes me better anyway. So all well in the French camp, it seems.
Yeah. I'm casting back to memories of 2010, was it?
Oh yeah,
Raymond Domenech. I think
the bus.
I don't think Deschamps does horoscopes or relies on them the same as Domenech, but yeah, it's starting to look that way, isn't it? Because thinking back to the last Euros, there was some quarrel between Benzema and Mbappe, and then another, Giroud, of course, was a player that was, part of some trio that weren't getting on. It used to be the Dutch that fell out at these tournaments, but I think in the last few years it's the French that they've taken on that tradition. And actually, Mbappe, I mentioned him before, outshining Messi 4 years ago, but suddenly, because they don't have N'Golo Kante, because they don't have Paul Pogba, because Benzema's gone, suddenly there's an awful lot of pressure on him. And of course, one of the things about this tournament, of course, is that Qatar's influence doesn't just stop at this World Cup. Qatar, of course, own PSG, who Mbappe plays for, so they'll probably want their star man to put on a good showing. But he appears to be doing it with a rather lesser hand than you might be expected. And funny enough, Benzema's only World Cup was that one with Dominic and the bus. Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And,
They were, the French philosophers blame bad karma, I believe, for that. The French philosopher class, which is a very large body. Bad karma. I believe in that Netflix documentary, they reflected on the Henri handball without mentioning Ireland once, I believe. Pointed out that they went to the World Cup as frauds, and when you're a fraud, it never ends well, I believe.
But Conor, it's bad enough we're showing RTE2 showed a documentary about Saipan this evening. We don't need to start talking about Thierry Henry. John, thank you very much for joining us. We'll let you go. Me and Conor will stay to the bitter end of USA Wales here and tell people what happened.
Half a minute left.
Okay. Well, good luck, lads. Thanks for having me.
No worries, John. Chat to you again. See you now. Yes, Conor. So you're ahead of me, so you can talk us through this. No, by all means, you don't need to talk us through it. But no, just tell us when it ends. That's all. And the other game tomorrow, just by the way, is Mexico v Poland. Not going to put you on the spot here, Conor, and ask you for any big thoughts.
Mexico will reach the last 16 as they do.
That's
what
they do
since the year BC,
and their fans will add much wanted colour because, as John said, they are always there.
One of my main reflections of the weekend is just how bad Qatar are, and how I can't fathom how a team would want to host a tournament like this when their country would want to host a tournament like this when their own country is so poor. I mean, I would be utterly mortified if Ireland got a tournament and we're quite as bad as that. So, I mean, it's going to be.
It's true. Well, we got a tournament last year and it didn't qualify. So if we get a tournament, we'll see if we get into
long ball from Wales here. Have they a chance to? Oh no, the keeper's out, headed away. Oh, he's out of it. Oh, right. Wales have a free on the keeper had come out to head away a clearance, and I forget who but Bale kind of got on the ball at halfway and was winding up to kind of try a loft towards the empty net, but Acosta has come through the back of him very wisely. I should add, and taken the yellow card for it. So
would it have reminded you of a golf shot, this loft, do you think?
This lovely dink, golf on the brain. But there's over 10 minutes gone in injury time. Okay, I've never done this before, by the way. So
no, this is the idea. I thought it would add an element of frisson to our podcast if we watch the final half hour of the 7 p.m. kickoff.
The free kick is floated into the keeper's hands, and it's lashed clear to the sound of the final whistle. So that's that. The Welsh, they look like they were floundering in the first half, drowning, lucky to be 0 down as far as I can see. But they've, in typical style, they've dug in more than some of their parts as usual, and Gareth Bale with the penalty to get a draw. So they're well alive in this tournament. Very
well summarised there, Conor. If RTE lose too many commentators during this tournament for any reason, I'll put in a good word for you.
I might get Saudi Arabia if we.
Maybe Poland and Saudi Arabia might be the one for you.
It might be one for me.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, Conor, and John in absentia. Just a reminder, as always, every single game can be watched on RTE. The vast majority of them on RTE2, and obviously a few final group games on the RTE News channel. But if you can't watch them on television or the very reliable RTE player, which has been working for me all day up here in my office, you can follow them on the RTE Sport website and the RTE News app. So thank you, Conor, and we will chat to you all tomorrow. Good luck.
Let's go!